here. Happy Friday! Yay! Happy end of the week. Happy about to be a long weekend too. I know we have Memorial Day coming up on Monday, so you'll get an extra day to spend some time with your family, and also an extra day to be taking some time to think about Memorial Day and all that it means to us. Taking time to honor and remember and respect the men and women who keep our country safe, and especially those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice and who have passed in honor of our country and our freedoms. So Memorial Day is an important day to take time to think of them, but also of course to take some time for you and to enjoy some time for you and your family too. We'll be catching up on Tuesday with some new choice boards and a very special surprise coming up, but more on that on Tuesday. I'm going to leave you hanging on that. Speaking of leaving you hanging, I left you hanging at a really important part of our story too. I know we left off in James and the Giant Peach with the words, "Look out, centipede," cried James, "look out!" What he's looking out for, what's about to happen, we don't really know. So we'll read on and see if we can find out what new twists and turns are about to happen next. So we left off with chapter 26. The centipede, who had begun dancing wildly around the deck during the song, had suddenly gone too close to the downward curving edge of the peach, and for 3 awful seconds, he had stood teetering on the brink, swinging his legs frantically in circles in an effort to stop himself from falling over backwards into space. But before anyone could reach him, down he fell. He gave a shriek of terror as he fell, and the others, rushing to the side and peering over, saw his poor long body tumbling over and over and over through the air, getting smaller and smaller until he was out of sight. "Silkworm!" yelled James. "Quick, start spinning!" The silkworm sighed, for she was still very tired from spinning all that silk for the seagulls, but she did as she was told. "I'm going down after him," cried James, grabbing the silk string as it started coming out of the silkworm and tying one end of it around his waist. "The rest of you hold on to Silkworm so I don't pull her over with me, and later on, if you feel 3 tugs on the string, start hauling me up again." He jumped, and down he went, tumbling down after the centipede, down, down, down toward the ocean below. And you can imagine how quickly the silkworm had to spin to keep up with the speed of his fall. "We'll never see either of them again," cried the ladybug. Oh dear, just when we were all so happy too." Miss Spider, the glowworm, and the ladybug all began to cry. So did the earthworm. "I don't care a bit about the centipede," the earthworm sobbed, "but I really did love that little boy." Very softly, the old green grasshopper started to play the funeral march on his violin, and by the time he had finished, everyone, including himself, was in a flood of tears. Suddenly, there came 3 sharp tugs on the rope. "Pull!" shouted the old green grasshopper. "Everyone behind me and pull!" There was about a mile of string to be hauled in, but they all worked like mad, and in the end, over the side of the peach, there appeared a dripping wet James with a dripping wet centipede clinging to him tightly with all 42 of his legs. "He saved me," gasped the centipede. "He swam around in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean until he found me." "My dear boy," the old green grasshopper said, patting James on the back. "Milo, could you drink a little quieter while we're reading? I don't know if you can hear him." "Oh, you okay? Wrong pipe? Are you all right, buddy?" "Okay, sorry, he's okay." You know when you drink too fast sometimes and it goes down the wrong pipe? I think he just had the equivalent of that. Excuse me, back to our story. Donkey emergency all over. "My dear boy," the old green grasshopper said, patting James on the back, "I do congratulate you." "My boots!" cried the centipede. Centipede. "Just look at my precious boots! They are ruined by the water." "Be quiet," the earthworm said. "You are lucky to be alive." "Are we still going up and up?" asked James. "We certainly are," answered the old green grasshopper, "and it's beginning to get dark." "I know. It'll be night soon." "Why don't we all go down below and keep warm until tomorrow morning?" Miss Spider suggested. No, the great old green grasshopper said. I think that would be very unwise. It will be safer if we all stay up here through the night and keep watch. Then if anything happens, we shall be ready for it. And of course, we can imagine something must be about to happen, right? There's always something about to happen in the story. Chapter 27. James Henry Trotter and his companions crouched close together on top of the peach as the night began closing in around them. Clouds like mountains towered high above their heads on all sides, mysterious, menacing, overwhelming. Gradually it grew darker and darker, and then a pale three-quarter moon came up over the tops of the clouds and cast an eerie light on the whole scene. The giant peach swayed gently from side to side as it floated along, and the hundreds of silky white strings going upward from the stem were beautiful in the moonlight. So also was a great flock of seagulls overhead. There was not a sound anywhere. Traveling upon the peach was in the least like traveling on an airplane. The airplane comes clattering and roaring through the sky, and whatever might be lurking secretly up there in the great cloud mountains goes running for cover at its approach. That is why people who travel in airplanes never see anything. But the peach, the peach was a soft, stealthy traveler, making no noise at all as it floated along. And several times during that long, silent night ride, high up in the middle, above the middle of the ocean in the moonlight, James and his friends saw things that no one else had ever seen before. Use your imagination for this. You ready? Once, as they drifted silently past a massive white cloud, they saw the top of a group of strange, tall, wispy-looking things. They were about twice the heights of ordinary people. They were not easy to see at first because they were almost as white as the cloud itself. But as the peach sailed closer to it, it became obvious that these things were actually living creatures. Tall, wispy, wrath-like, shadowy white creatures who looked as though they were made out of a mixture of cotton wool and candy floss and thin white hairs. Ooh, the ladybug said, I don't like this at all. Shh. James whispered back. Don't let them hear you. They must be cloudmen. Cloudmen. Huh. Now that's a new twist and turn in the story, isn't it? Let's see what these cloudmen are. Cloudmen, they murmured, huddling closer together for comfort. Oh dear, oh dear. I'm glad I'm blind and cannot see them, the earthworm said, or I would probably scream. I hope they don't turn around and see us, Miss Spider stammered. Do you think they would eat us? The earthworm asked. They would eat you, the centipede answered, grinning. They would cut you up like a salami and eat you in thin slices. Always so helpful. The poor earthworm began to quiver all over with fright. But what are they doing? The old green grasshopper whispered. I don't know, James answered softly. Let's watch and see. The cloudmen were all standing in a group, and they were doing something peculiar with their hands. First, they would reach out, all of them at once, and grab handfuls of cloud. And then they would roll these handfuls of clouds in their fingers until they turned into what looked like large white marbles. Then they would toss the marbles to one side and quickly grab more bits of cloud and start over again. It was all very silent and very mysterious. The pile of marbles beside them kept growing larger and larger. Soon there was a truckload of them there at least. They must be absolutely mad, the centipede said. There's nothing to be afraid of here. Be quiet, you pest, the earthworm whispered. We shall all be eaten if they see us. But the cloud men were much too busy with what they were doing to have noticed the great peach floating silently up behind them. Then the watchers on the peach saw one of the cloud men raising his long, wispy arms above his head, and they heard him shouting, All right, boys, that's enough. Get the shovels! And all the other cloudmen immediately started to let out this high-pitched, strange whoop of joy. And they started jumping up and down and waving their arms in the air. And then they picked up these marbles and began shoveling them as fast as they could over the side of the cloud into space. Down they go, they chanted as they worked. Down they go, hail and snow, freezes and sneezes and noses will blow. It's hailstones, whispered James excitedly. They've been making hailstones, and now they're showering them down onto the people in the world below. Hailstones, the centipede said. That's ridiculous. This is summertime. You don't have hailstones in summertime. They're practicing for winter, James told him. I don't believe it, shouted the centipede, raising his voice. Shh, the others whispered. And James said softly, for heaven's sake, centipede, don't make so much noise. The centipede roared with laughter. They couldn't hear anything, he cried. They're deaf as doorknobs, you watch. And before anyone could stop him, he had cupped his front feet over his mouth and was yelling at the cloudmen as loud as he could. Hey, he yelled. Hey, you! Hey! What on earth do you think you're doing over there? The effect was immediate. Uh-oh. The cloudmen jumped around as if they'd been stung by wasps. And when they saw the great golden peach floating past them, not 50 yards away in the sky, they gave a yelp of surprise and dropped their shovels to the ground. And there they stood with the moonlight streaming down over them, absolutely motionless. Like a group of tall, white, hairy statues, staring and staring at the gigantic fruit as it went sailing by. The passengers on the peach, all except for the centipede, sat frozen with terror, looking back at the cloudmen and wondering what was going to happen next. Now you've done it, you loathsome pest, whispered the earthworm to the centipede. I'm not frightened of them, shouted the centipede. And to show everybody once again that he wasn't, he stood up to his full height and started dancing about and making insulting signs at the cloudmen with all of his legs. This evidently infuriated the cloudmen beyond belief. All at once they spun around and grabbed great handfuls of hailstones and rushed to the edge of the cloud and started throwing them at the peach, shrieking with fury all the time. Look out, cried James. Quick, lie down, lie flat on the deck. It was lucky they did. A large hailstone can hurt you as much as a rock or a lump of lead if it's thrown hard enough. And oh my goodness, how these cloudmen could throw. The hailstones came whizzing through the air like bullets from a machine gun, and James could hear them smashing against the sides of the peach and burying themselves into the peach flesh with horrible squelching noises. Plop, 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 plop. And then ping, 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 as they bounced off of the poor ladybug's shell because she couldn't lie as flat as the others. And then crack as one of them hit the centipede right on the nose, and crack again as another one hit him somewhere else. Ow, he cried. Ow, stop, stop, stop. But the cloudmen had no intention of stopping. James could see them rushing about on the cloud like a lot of huge hairy ghosts, picking up hailstones from a pile, dashing to the edge of the cloud, hurling the hailstones at the peach, dashing back to get more, and then, when the pile of stones was all gone, they simply grabbed handfuls of cloud and made as many more as they wanted, and much bigger ones now, some of them as large as cannonballs. Quickly, cried James, down the tunnel or we'll all be wiped out. There was a rush for the tunnel entrance, and half a minute later, everybody was safely downstairs inside the stone of the peach, trembling with fright and listening to the noise of the hailstones as they came crashing against the side of the peach. I'm a wreck, cried the centipede. I am wounded all over. It serves you right, said the earthworm. Would someone kindly look and see if my shell is cracked? The ladybug said. Give us some light, shouted the old green grasshopper. I can't, wailed the glowworm. They've broken my bulb. Then put in another one, the centipede said. Be quiet a moment, said James. Listen. I do believe they're not hitting us anymore. They all stopped talking and listened. Yes, the noise had stopped. The hailstones were no longer smashing against the peach. Whew, we've left them behind. The seagulls must have pulled us away out of danger. Hooray, let us go up and see. Cautiously, with James going first, they all climbed back up the tunnel. James poked his head out and looked around. It's all clear, he called. I can't see them anywhere. And I'll read on a bit more. We'll do one more chapter today. Chapter 28. One by one, the travelers came out again to the top of the peach and gazed carefully around. The moon was still shining as brightly as ever, and there was still plenty of large, shimmering cloud mountains on all sides, but there were no cloudmen in sight now. The peach is leaking, shouted the old green grasshopper, peering over the side. It's full of holes, and the juice is dripping out everywhere. That does it, cried the earthworm. If the peach is leaking, then we shall all surely sink. Tell Don't be crazy, the centipede told him. We're not on the water now. Oh, look, shouted the ladybug. Look, over there. Everybody swung around to look. In the distance and directly ahead of them, they now saw a most extraordinary sight. It was kind of an arc. A colossal curvy-shaped thing that reached high up into the sky and came down at both ends. The ends were resting upon a huge, flat cloud that was as big as a desert. Now, what in the world is that? Asked James. It's a bridge. It's an enormous hoop cut in half. It's a gigantic horseshoe standing upside down. Stop me if I'm wrong, murmured the centipede, going white in the face. But might those not be cloud men climbing over it? There was a dreadful silence. The peach floated closer and closer. They are cloud men! There are hundreds of them, thousands, millions! I don't want to hear about it, shrieked the poor blind earthworm. I'd rather be on the end of a fish hook and use as bait than come up against those terrible creatures again. I'd rather be fried alive and eaten, cried old green grasshopper. Please keep quiet, answered James. It's our only hope. They crouched very still on top of the peach, staring at the cloudmen. The whole surface of the cloud was literally swarming with them, and there were hundreds more up above, climbing on that monstrous curvy arch. But what is that thing? Whispered Ladybug, and what are they doing to it? I don't care what they're doing to it, the centipede said, scuttling over the tunnel entrance. I'm not staying up here. Goodbye. Oops, sorry, Ollie. But the rest of them were too frightened or too hypnotized by the whole affair to even make a move. Do you know what? James whispered. What, they said. What? That enormous arch, they seem to be painting it. They've got pots of paint and big brushes. You look. And he was quite right. The travelers were close enough now to see that this was exactly what the cloudmen were doing. They all had huge brushes in their hands, and they were splashing the paint onto the great curvy arch in a frenzy of speed, so fast, in fact, that in a few minutes the whole arch became covered with the most glorious colors. Reds, blues, greens, yellows, and purples. Do you know what it is? You too, Milo? It's a rainbow, everyone said at once. They're making a rainbow. Oh, isn't it just beautiful? Just look at those colors. Centipede, they shouted. You must come up and see this. They were so enthralled by the beauty and brilliance of this rainbow that they forgot to keep their voices low any longer. The centipede poked his head cautiously out of the tunnel entrance. Well, he said. I've always wondered how those things were made, but why all the ropes? What are they doing with those ropes? Good heavens! They're pushing it off the cloud, cried James. There it goes. They're lowering it down to the earth with ropes. And I'll tell you something else, the centipede said sharply. If I'm not greatly mistaken, we ourselves are going to bump right into it. Oh, no. Bless my soul, he's right, the old green grasshopper exclaimed. The rainbow was now dangling in the air below the cloud. The peach was also just below the level of the cloud, and it was headed directly toward the rainbow, traveling rather fast. We are lost, Miss Spider cried, wringing her feet all over again. The end has come. I can't stand it, wailed the earthworm. Tell me what's happening. We're going to miss it, shouted the ladybug. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Yes, no. Oh, my heavens. Hold on, everybody, James called out, and suddenly there was a tremendous thud as the peach went crashing into the top part of the rainbow. This was followed by an awful splintering noise as the enormous rainbow snapped right across the middle and became two separate pieces. The next thing that happened was extremely unfortunate. The ropes that the cloudmen had been using for lowering the rainbow got tangled with the silk strings that went up from the peach to the seagulls. The peach was trapped. Panic and pandemonium broke out among the travelers, and James Henry Trotter, glancing up quickly, saw the faces of 1,000 furious cloudmen peering down at him over the edge of the cloud. Their faces had almost no shape at all because of the long white hairs that covered them. There were no noses, no mouths, no ears, no chins. Only the eyes were visible on each face. You're being very helpful. Thank you, sir. If you can back up a little for me, though. Two small black eyes were glinting marvelously through the hairs. Then came the most frightening thing of all. One cloud man, A huge, hairy creature who must have been 14 feet tall at least suddenly stood up and made a tremendous leap off the side of the cloud, trying to get to one of the silk strings above the peach. James and his friends saw him go flying through the air above him, his arms outstretched in front of him, reaching to the nearest string, and they saw him grab it and cling to it with his hands and legs, and then very, very slowly, hand over hand, he began to come down the string. Uh-oh, they're about to have visitors. "Mercy, help, save us," cried the ladybug. "He's coming down to eat us," cried the old green grasshopper. "Jump overboard." "Then eat the earthworm first," shouted the centipede. "It's no good eating me, I'm full of bones." "Centipede," yelled James. "Quickly, bite through that string, the one is coming down." The centipede rushed over to the stem of the peach and took the silk string in his teeth and bit through it with one snap of his jaws. Immediately, far above them, a single seagull was seen to come away with the rest of the flock and go flying off with a long string trailing from its neck. And clinging desperately to the end of the string, shouting and mad with fury, was the huge, hairy cloud man. Up and up he went, swinging across the moonlit sky. And James Henry Trotter, watching him with delight, said, "My goodness, he must weigh almost nothing at all. For one seagull to be able to pull him like that, he must be all hair and air." The rest of the cloudmen were so flabbergasted at seeing one of their company carried away in this manner that they let go of the ropes they were holding. And then, of course, down went the rainbow, both halves of it together, tumbling toward the earth below. This freed the peach, which at once began sailing away from that terrible cloud. But the travelers were not in the clear yet. The infuriated, mad cloudmen jumped up and ran after them along the cloud, pelting them mercilessly with all sorts of hard, horrible objects. Empty paint buckets, paintbrushes, step ladders, stools, saucepans, frying pans, rotten eggs, dead rats, bottles of hair oil, anything those brutes could lay their hands on came raining down upon the peach. One cloud man, taking very careful aim, tipped a gallon of thick purple paint over the edge of the cloud right onto the centipede himself. The centipede screamed with anger. "My legs!" he cried. "They are all sticking together! I can't walk, and my eyelids won't open! I can't see! And my boots are ruined!" But for the moment, everyone was far too busy dodging the things that the cloudmen were throwing to pay any attention to the centipede. "The paint is drying," he moaned. "It's going hard. I can't move my legs. I can't move anything." "You can still move your mouth," the earthworm said, "and that is a great pity." "James," bawled the centipede, "please help me. Wash off this paint. Scrape it off. Anything." And I will leave you hanging there today for thankfully not too long. I'll catch you back up on Tuesday. And believe it or not, we're getting closer to the end of this story. We have just a bit to go to find out where this journey will end. So far, we've got the peach traveling on from Aunt Sponge and Aunt Spiker's house. But where it will end up finally in the end of the story, I don't know, Milo. Do you think you can predict it? Think you can see? Thinks he can see something. Well, today I will leave you with that and a reminder to check the Google Classroom. Have a fabulous weekend and look for updates on Tuesday. We have some very special things waiting for you. For now, look for moments where you can show caring and kindness to one another and have a fabulous long weekend. I'll see you all soon. Bye, guys.